is that there we go. So now we are recording officially. I am so delighted to welcome you to this panel. My name is Kat Fribley, and I am the executive director here at Birdability. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a fat, white, middle-aged, multiply disabled queer femme. I have purple hair right now up in two buns mixed with some gray and brown. And I'm wearing some chunky black glasses and woodpecker earrings, red-headed woodpecker earrings. Um, Behind me is a bright red wall and some plants. In order to welcome you today, I want to acknowledge, first of all, the fact that I am here in Iowa City, Iowa, which is the original and current land of the Meskwaki people. And I am so absolutely grateful to be welcoming folks from across the country for this conversation. In order to create the virtual access, as much virtual access as possible, we have ASL interpretation as well as captions for this event. To generate captions, please go to the bottom of the screen and select the box that says CC in the toolbar. You can there choose show subtitles, and that will allow you to follow along with captions. For us to build a community based in disability justice, we will pause if there's any breakdown of access during this time. And also, one of the things that I will tell you is we're pretty informal, friends. This is meant to be, in many ways, a conversation. And so I am just going to pull back the curtain and say, hi, Connor, welcome. So glad you're here. We'll take a break if any of our access sorts of considerations or technologies start to fail, and we'll reestablish access before we continue moving on. Due to the number of us, you came in without your camera on and without your sound on. You are welcome to turn on your camera. We love the opportunity to see your faces. We also really welcome you to keep your camera off if that is something that will enhance your participation or just allow you to keep some spoons for something else later today. So feel free to have on a camera or have off a camera. Due to the number of us participating, we ask that you do remain muted unless we call on you. And we will use the chat, no doubt about it, for questions, for comments. I wanted to let folks who are using screen readers know that you can turn off, actually. We've enabled the option in Zoom settings for you to choose to have the screen reader skip the comment in the Zoom chat. And that is because for folks who are using screen readers, the sort of like, Michelle Morton loved your comment is a 5-second speech, right? Instead of something that can be easily ignored. So if you are using a screen reader, please feel free to enable that option. We encourage you to let us know if there's something else that we can do to make this more accessible to you. We are all learning every day about how to do better with each other and for our communities. So, Birdability, you all, you're here because Birdability is a national nonprofit working to create access and inclusion in the outdoors and in the birding world for people with disabilities and health concerns. And we became a nonprofit in 2021 after Virginia Rose started this fantastic organization back in 2018. And we are so happy to be able to take a week every year where we uplift the voices of birders with disabilities, where we talk about access and inclusion in our work and in our world. And honestly, where we get just super birdie together in all the places that we can and harness some of that joy. Never more important than it is right now. Let's harness some of that bird joy. So there's tons of things happening this week. I hope you might join us on a virtual bird outing that we're doing. We're doing those every morning at 10 a.m. Eastern on Instagram. You can find us at Birdability. Those are opportunities for us to start our day together with birdie joy and Then each evening, and sometimes during the day as well, we're having these virtual events. There's still time to register for them, and you're welcome to do that at birdability.org and using the tab Birdability Week. We absolutely cannot do this work without building on the shoulders of so many others, including Black Birders Week, the Latino Conservation Week, and Let's Go Birding Together. So this Birdability Week is really building on a whole set of opportunities for folks to acknowledge the ways that our society, our communities, and the birding community have left people out, have marginalized people. And so trying really hard to make sure that collectively we're uplifting each other as we do that. I want to also say we can't do this without your support. There are so many ways that you can support our work. Donating is certainly one of them. There's going to be a link in the chat to our donation page and to our PayPal giving account. We also happily take old-fashioned checks if you're like me and you still have an actual checkbook. If this work is meaningful to you, I really would appreciate you thinking about making a donation to Birdability. And if you do, by the way, and it's more than $15, I'll send you a patch that says you belong here, Birdability Week 2025. These are limited edition. We still have about 30 of them left. So if you would like one and you donate more than $15, it'll be headed your way. I want to say thank you to our Birdability captains, the ones who are here right now for this panel, and all of the ones who've participated in creating Birdability Week and in creating Birdability and doing the work of Birdability across the country. They are the core, really, of this organization. And I can't thank each of them enough. I also want to call out our sponsors. We have so many sponsors this year, you all, 25 plus organizations committed to access and inclusion with us for Birdability Week. But I especially want to give a shout out to our Golden Eagle sponsor, the National Audubon Society, and our Belted Kingfisher sponsor, the Utah State University for Disability Research Policy and Practice. They're one of a network of federally designated university centers for excellence in developmental disability. And we couldn't be doing this without them. They've made so much of Birdability Week possible, including ASL interpretation. So thank you, National Audubon Society, and thank you to USU. Our board, pretty awesome, I have to say. And I also want to shout out our ASL interpreters. We work with Pro Bono ASL, and we're really grateful to them for providing interpreters for this event. With that, should just get us to the good stuff, right? Because the reason you all are here is to get to have a conversation with Birdability Captain Conservation Corps members. These are captains, folks who joined the Birdability Captains Conservation Corps over the course of the last year and have been participating in really fantastic ways, each of them in very different ways that I'm excited for you to get to hear about. So I'm just going to say, everybody gets a chance to introduce themselves, and I'm going to start on my screen and I'm going to go sideways and call on you. And when I call on you, if you would share your name, your pronouns, where you are, how are you involved in conservation? And then tell us a little bit about that role and how you came to connect that work with Birdability. So I'm going to start us actually with Joe. Joe, you're first on my screen. So if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and just getting us rolling.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Good afternoon, all. I'm incredibly excited to be here sharing space with you. I am Jo Dumbia, a light brown complexion woman. I wear glasses and have brown hair long to the shoulders. Behind me, there is a gorgeous blue sky, sort of covered with flowering cherry blossoms. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm calling from Northern Virginia. As a Northern Virginia Bird Alliance board member and diversity and inclusion chair, as well as a new Birdability ambassador, I see myself as a connector Within the organization, I had already opened bridges for other communities not yet included. So it was not too difficult to start looking for ways to create space and start bringing birdability to Northern Virginia Bird Alliance. I immediately began exploring ways to create a platform for disabled birders and birders to be. I set my target for Birdability Week. I began talking about the activities we could do to honor this week. I engaged with our ED and other board members and put our ED in touch with Kat. Kat graciously accepted to make a presentation to our members in early October. So that is an official introduction of Birdability to our members. So absolutely excited about it. We also organize a Birdability Birding outing for this coming Saturday and are committed to have a birdability activity at least once each quarter. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Joe, for introducing yourself and sharing a little bit about your role at the Northern Virginia Bird Alliance. And you all will notice as folks introduce themselves, I tried to sort of put together a group of people who have really different experiences, right, that you bring to the table in terms of your conservation work. Michelle, you're next on my screen. Will you share a little bit about yourself and about how you came to this birdability work?
Sure thing. Hi, everyone. Thanks, everyone, for being here. My name is Michelle Morton. I use she, her pronouns. I am a white woman with longer than shoulder length, brown, reddish hair. I'm wearing a green sweatshirt that has two little birds on it for Birdability Week. And behind me are some family photos. I'm working from home today. I am calling in today from Central Indiana. I work at a living history museum here called Conner Prairie Museum. And in my role, I get to plan and facilitate nature-based programs for our guests. We sit on over 1,000 acres, and last year in March of 24, we opened 2 new trails in our space. And so I get to do a lot of work related to programs on the trails, whether that's birding programs or guided nature outings or forest therapy. I have the best job and I absolutely love it. And in part of my role, I get to connect with folks in the world of conservation and nature programming here in Indiana, trying to visit their spaces, trying to bring them out to our space so we can learn from each other. And about 2 years ago, I was with a colleague who works for Indiana Audubon, and we were just brainstorming some programs. And she said, "Oh, this could be a great space to do some birdability work." And I said, "What's birdability?" And that sent me on a path of learning and getting excited and having the chance to connect with Kat and joining the BC3 Captains program in January of this year.
Thank you so much, Michelle. So glad you're here. Lindsay, you're next on my screen if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and talking a little bit about what you do.
Absolutely. So my name is Lindsay. I use she, her pronouns, and I am currently calling in from Palm Springs, California on the Agua Caliente Reservation, which is on the unceded territory of the Cahuilla. I am the Senior Education Coordinator for Audubon, California's Salton Sea and Desert Program. So I do a lot of my work surrounded in the Coachella Valley. I know everyone knows the word Coachella because of a certain music festival. And we also extend out into Imperial Valley, which is where the Salton Sea sits. And if you are not aware of the Salton Sea, we are the largest by surface area lake in the state of California. So we are not a tiny little pond. We are massive and very important along the Pacific Flyway. As a senior education coordinator, I work to build education programs that are primarily Indigenous first because we live on unceded territory of the Cahuilla. And I always make my program holistic and human focused. I am with National Audubon, so our main topic is birds, but I recognize that humans are the important driving force behind protecting and conserving bird habitat and bird populations. Um,
Yeah.
And my introduction to birdability was actually through an all-staff email I received from Audubon. And I didn't realize that this was a formal community of resources. Birdability and disability access is just my livelihood. I have two siblings out of the total of four siblings that I have are developmentally delayed, and one of them lives, she's visually impaired and utilizes a wheelchair. So I don't have a spark bird. I have a spark sister
I love it.
who really pushed me into birds. She has a hummingbird feeder right outside her bedroom window, and she knows hummingbirds by sound now. And anytime she hears a bird, she asks me and my mom, "What's that bird? Get your Merlin bird app out," because she wants to know what the bird is. And because of that inspiration from her and that excitement I never knew she had, I ran a blind birder birdathon event out here in Rancho Mirage, and we got to do some blind birding. I learned birds by sound, and and I'll get into it a bit more in one of our next questions, but just that excitement that I saw from my loved one, I really want to make sure that everyone else's loved ones and everyone else, because everyone is a loved one of someone, that they have this access and that excitement too. So that is how I came to be a captain for birdability.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Lindsay. And last but certainly not least, Connor, I'm so excited to get to hear a little bit from you. Connor, go for it. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to Birdability and what your work is right now.
So, my name is Connor. I use they, them pronouns. I am a very white, masculine presenting person. And I have short, sitting up straight brown hair with a blurred background currently. I am currently taking this Zoom over from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Um, I got into birding around December 2023. It took me about a year or so. Last Birdability Week is when I found out about birdability, I believe, and I attended a nature journaling workshop, which was, of course, wonderful. Um, I shortly after applied, became a birdability member and Conservation Corps captain. And then this past summer, I was a Let's Go Birding intern for a combination of Environment for the Americas, birdability, and the National Park Service. I would host accessible bird programs at Rocky Mountain National Park. Um, and that has ultimately ended, but it was an absolute blast and was some of the most fun work I've ever done. And now I'm here.
Yay. And we're so excited that you'll continue taking that accessible birding into all the places that you go next in the National
Course.
Park Service and beyond. So, friends, you each come to this from such a different place, but I know that each of you have seen the impact and felt the impact that access and inclusion can make for a visitor, a colleague, for a community member, for yourselves, right? In nature and in birding. And I'm curious if you would be willing to share a little bit about that. And Lindsay, I'm going to come back to you to start us off because I know you, as you were starting to talk about this, you were like, wait, I'll wait, and sort of get to that in a minute and not share it right in that moment. But I am guessing that that's part of certainly the story you were starting to want to tell us, right, about your blind birding event.
Absolutely. And I just realized I did not give a description of myself. I apologize. I am a white-skinned woman. I have long, dark brown hair. It goes beyond the Zoom screen. I have a background of monarch butterflies behind me. It's a virtual background. I wish I was in a field of monarchs. The Audubon logo is also on there, and it is a split screen of purple flowers and yellow flowers. And yes, one of it's the main moment in my mind I will take with me through life all the way until I'm done with life. Uh,
Mhm.
my little sister, she is visually impaired and utilizes a wheelchair. So she's got two things that are just very hard to make accessible in the outdoors, I find out here. When I tried to build this blind birdathon event, I was struggling to find an area that could accommodate her, that it was traversable with a wheelchair, and my mom pushing her behind in the wheelchair, um, and somewhere that wasn't too hot. It needed to be shaded, which is very difficult in the desert here because she has cerebral palsy as well, and one of her struggles is body heat, like sustainability. And I found the perfect place. We happen to have a wonderful bird surveyor that we use, and he said, I know the place, and I'm gonna lead the talk and the walk with you. And so we got out there, and I could not get my sister to leave. And this is a little context about her. If she does not like to do something, if she is bored, she will tell you immediately and say, I'm done, I'm going home, and it will take as quick as a minute. We were out there for over an hour. It was close to 2 hours in the sun, fairly hot for her because she's not from the desert. And she was just excited. She had this person, this mentor to ask questions of like, what was that bird? I heard that. She would bring up birds that she hears at home, and our bird surveyor would give her information about it. And I have this wonderful photo of the two of them where he's holding the screen, a phone screen up to her face because she can see some images when they are fairly close. And he would play the Merlin at bird sounds so that she could hear it in nature and then connect it and be like, oh yeah, that is a grosbeak. And she just, I was so shocked that she didn't want to go home. And I was like, ah, okay, I want to go home actually. I'm the one saying we're done here. And the entire drive home up until this day, so this event was during the blind birder, so some months ago, she is constantly asking, when are we doing it again? When can I go birding? So it's just a constant reminder that this is very important work. You know, some of us can go outdoors, we just open our door and walk outside. And we all know the benefit of being outdoors and hearing the birds. And we need to get everyone involved in outdoors because of that benefit. We cannot leave anyone behind. And that just seeing my sister out there who would otherwise be left behind, it was so important and poignant to be that person who could make that program for her.
I so appreciate that. And the ways that when things are designed, right, for people with disabilities and other chronic health concerns, it opens up so many opportunities. So thank you for sharing that story. Connor, I'm going to come back to you, and then I'm going to go to Joe and Michelle to answer the same sort of question. Is there a story or a moment that you would like to share, Connor?
Probably my favorite moment would be we did some outreach with a organization that was particular to neurodivergent teens and adults, and had them come out to Rocky Mountain National Park and have a short little tour and bird watching session. Um, and some of the people that would come would get very intense feelings of being tired or bored during the middle of the walk, which of course will happen. But even those same individuals, after just spending a little bit more time out there and us trying to uh, gain them some bird knowledge, I guess, or introduce them to new birds. I remember one, really, really tired in the middle of the walk, and we were like half a mile away from the car. So I was like, oh, I hope everything will be okay. And then less than a quarter of a mile later, they were telling me how they want to be an ornithologist when they grow up. And I was literally like, oh my God, like this is working. It might not be the easiest, but we are getting them interacting with birds more and getting them to love birds. And so that's a moment that's hold a special place in my heart from the summer.
Thank you for that. I have to say, Also just a quick shout out for Connor and their work. They also created an accessible owl prowl. And as somebody who loves owls and has mobility issues, I am desperate for an accessible owl prowl because they are so often a struggle. So just that was one of the things that it got me thinking even about how we can create opportunities, right, for folks in spaces that often seem antithetical to access. They don't have to be. Joe, is there a moment that you would like to bring to the conversation? Oh, you're muted, friend.
After so many years, and still we don't know this stuff, right?
I know, right?
I'm really very new to Birdability and people with accessible challenges. The one sort of moment that stuck with me, it is when we participated as part of this Warming Up My Organization on the International Adaptive Day, where they were bringing, different tools and different equipment and different activities to be able to, for people to navigate, in the area that we were in a national park. And this park has all terrains wheelchair. So there was this teenager. He had his regular wheelchair, but when he saw that, he immediately asked to be moved because he wanted to move to the area where he had heard birds. And so it was like, he could navigate and twist and turn. And so the excitement of that. And so that, realization that unless you are really very close of confronting with those realities, you just don't appreciate the value and the desire and the need for people to do exactly the same things that I do without anything. So that really set me, that sort of validate further and further that I will do as much as I can to be able to, facilitate platform, for people with disabilities. So yeah.
Thank you for saying that. And it makes me think that maybe we'll come back to this too, but adaptive equipment, there's such a role in conservation and in conservation-based organizations, in parks and land trusts, to be able to create those sorts of resources to be available to folks. And so if you are interested, there's a document on our website under guidance and considerations about loaner equipment closets and the ways that adaptive equipment can create access for everyone. Michelle, how about you? Is there a moment you would like to highlight?
I'd love to, thanks. So this past May, some colleagues and I hosted events during Black Birders Week. We partnered with our local chapter of Outdoor Afro, and the folks from that organization led this happened to be a bird walk. They led the program, and then we were doing a lot of the behind the scenes and the logistics and helping on that side of things. And on one of the outings, an older Black woman joined, and she said, "Oh, I've never done anything like this. I'm so excited to be here. I need to rest a lot when I'm walking." And I said, "Well, we're glad you're here. The first bench we're going to get to is a little far, so I'm just going to bring this chair along, and anytime you want to sit, we can just, pause and do some stationary birding." Although I recently heard it called birding by butt, and that might be my new favorite, phrase. Yes. So we were doing a little birding by butt and, wandering along. And at one point I was on radio, and I was called on radio to assist with something else. And so I had to step away for about 5 minutes. And when I joined back up with the group, I noticed that somebody else had just picked up the chair and was walking along. And then every time the group would stop or this participant needed a rest, we would just put the chair down and she would rest, and some folks would stationary bird. And it was this beautiful moment that just everyone was stepping up to support her access need. And we were all so grateful that she felt safe to advocate for what she needed, and that we could just all jump in and help. And so it was this beautiful moment. And also this great reminder of, I really wish that I had asked for people's access needs at the beginning. That wasn't, I'm still very new in this world of being a captain. And so now that's absolutely something I would do if we do a registration, or if at the beginning of the event I can ask. But I was just just happy that she felt safe enough to advocate for that, and we could support her in a way that worked well.
Yeah. There's so many ways to signal to people that you are open, right, to the access needs that they bring, and desire to be able to find solutions. And sometimes that is creating an atmosphere where they get to advocate for themselves. And sometimes it's modeling, like, hey, here's an access need that I have, or that we know the group has. And are there others? Are there things? Really inviting that. I love that. And it's a really good reminder that sometimes accessibility and inclusion are not just about those kinds of bricks and mortar or very physical location kinds of things. Often, when we talk about access in the natural world, people immediately go to uh, infrastructure changes. And I'm not saying we don't need those, because we do.
Ah,
There's lots of infrastructure changes we do need. But this is a really great reminder, Michelle, that there are ways in which it does not have to be something, a huge multi-million dollar project to re-excavate and grade. Sometimes it can be something as simple as, I'll have some chairs available and we'll bring them along with us. And you let me know if that's something that you need that can meet the access needs of
mm,
someone. It's a both and for sure. And Michelle, just let's start back up with you, if you wouldn't mind, because I want us to talk a little bit about what are some of the challenges and barriers that folks have seen or encountered in trying to make outdoor spaces more accessible. And I'm just really curious if there's something that comes to mind for you, whether that's at the space within that you work within, or whether that's in a broader context. Is there something that you've really identified as a large barrier?
Yeah, and I sort of mentioned this in that idea that I hadn't asked yet what the access needs were. And as I'm planning more and more events that are aiming to be inclusive and accessible, I'm I'm noticing, and this isn't through anybody's fault at the institution where I work, but we provide a lot of events and a lot of programs. So I just happen to do the nature ones, but we have history programs and big festivals and concerts, and there's a lot going on. And so when our marketing team requests that we give information, we only get this tiny amount of
Right.
space
Right.
to give the information. And I know how important it is to write an outing description that has so much information so folks can decide if it's accessible to them. But what actually gets published on our website or in the newsletter, it's so short. And, so I have to be really mindful of the language that I use and how can I indicate that this event could be accessible for folks. And so again, it's not really anyone's fault, but it is a challenge because there's
Mhm.
institutionally we have a lot going on, and it's hard to always portray to folks what the event is actually about. And
Yeah.
so I'm working, my goal in 2026 is to really think creatively about how we can both market our events so that way folks know, but then also say, hey, please contact me, or contact
Mhm.
our group ahead of time if there is any access needs you want to discuss. So
Yes.
that's a challenge I'm navigating right now.
I love that. And I love one of the things that I think is so important about the Birdability Captains Conservation Corps is our time together. We come together once a month in a community of practice. And often these are the kinds of things, right, that people bring. And they're like, there's just never enough space in our marketing materials. How have you navigated that? And then to hear from each other, right? Oh, we decided this is the sort of language we'll always use, and then it refers people back, right, for more specific information or whatever it might be. So thank you for naming that. Lindsay, I'm going to come to you and ask, is there something in particular that you have seen or encountered in trying to make outdoor spaces more accessible?
There's a lot.
Right? Like,
Um,
okay, we have only half an hour left, but
right.
I hear you.
Yeah, and the most like severe ones is the word no. I'll ask if I can host a program, and then I'll lay out my access needs. And some of the responses I get is a flat out no. I've heard, no, you can't have guide dogs because of the birds. Um,
Mhm.
there's also a lot of infrastructure issues out
Yep.
here. Because the Salton Sea is receding, it's exposing shoreline, which cannot be walked on.
Yeah.
I don't even know if a mobility access wheelchair could do it. Like this is like
Mhm.
thick mud, almost like that sinking sand.
Yeah.
So the infrastructure needs a lot of help out here. We're also quite far in distance from people,
Mm.
so that's another barrier that I've encountered. But there's always a solution, and there's always multiple solutions and workarounds. So when I'm told no or maybe not, my go-to is we're gonna figure out the yes. And worst case scenario, and it's not a worst case, I will bring the birds to you
I
through
love
an
it.
Instagram live, or I will go out there in our little desert and I will hunt for the accessible spots. And we have two truly incredible, fully accessible spots. You do have to drive there to them, they're quite far, but they're perfect in almost every sense. The parking lots are paved. They're massive. There is access for vans, the loading vans that my sister utilizes. That is one of the biggest barriers to get her anywhere. The pathways are completely concrete lined. They're not boardwalk to where it's a little bit difficult to use a cane. Um,
Mhm.
and the bathrooms are gorgeous. The soap dispensers are at an appropriate level. You can get in there with a wheelchair or a walking device. And it's just perfect. You can
Mhm.
go there no matter what access needs you need. But there
Mhm.
is a lot of barriers. One of the other barriers that I experience is just no response at all. I'll reach out to notable access organizations like the Braille Institute or even like senior centers, and I just sometimes will not get a response at all. And that is, I think, the biggest barrier because I can't
Mhm.
really find a solution when there is no response. But if you tell me no, I can figure it
You'll
out.
work around, right? You'll find a workaround. I love that. And I think a couple of things that you noted are just so important. That piece around attitudinal kinds of barriers is something we forget about a lot. We think about structural barriers in terms of the infrastructure, but we don't think about the ways that attitudinal barriers really prevent often folk from accessing nature and from accessing birding. And those have a different solution than being able to again do something that is a concrete action or task. Instead, it is more about changing minds and changing hearts and changing possibilities. And so I really appreciate you uplifting that. Also, bathrooms. I'm just going to say again, bathrooms is such a huge one. So thanks for naming that as well. Connor, I'm going to come down to you and ask, is there um, uh, something you'd like to uplift around barriers that you or have seen in your work or in your own life that you think would really help to make spaces more accessible if we were able to navigate or change them?
Yeah, so at the national park, I would work the visitor center desk a lot,
Mhm,
and the primary concern we looked at would be mobility concerns, length
mhm,
issues, incline. And when you're at Rocky Mountain National Park, you have a lot of trails that aren't very accessible, that have a lot of incline, and that are very long. Um, those are the primary concerns, but um, with the one organization we worked with that I talked about before, we hosted them twice. And a
mhm,
lot of what I identified access concerns came from what was not said than what was given in feedback to us. So
mhm,
a lunch break was like a must for these individuals. We
mhm,
interrupted their lunch break, went too long with our talking, and completely like ruined the mood for the second half of the walk. So taking that into mind for the second one was made things a lot smoother and a lot more enjoyable, I would say. In addition, on our second little outing, I carried around a cooler of water because I noticed they ran out of water about halfway through the walk, and then we were halfway away, about a half mile from getting back to the car with another water source. And despite it only being, you know, a mile loop, you got to do the whole mile before you get back to that water, unless you turn around really early. So try if you have like repeat people, trying to assess how they are feeling in the moment, because our feedback was simply 10 out of 10. We loved it. And then like none of that would have been captured if we didn't think about that for our next event with them.
I love that so much. Thank you for saying it, because it makes me think about another birdability captain who I just always appreciate my conversations with, Eric Clow. And one of the things that he wrote once that talked about that joy and access only can happen when we're doing what our bodies allow, right? And we're not absolutely having to exhaust ourselves and pushing beyond. And it makes me think about that very thing, thinking ahead of time, right? About scheduling in lunch breaks, or acknowledging that people may only have a capacity for so much in terms of being in programming or in nature. And so I really appreciate your thoughtfulness around that. And I will say, one of the other things you noted was sometimes there are spaces like Rocky Mountain National Park, they're mountainous. The inclines, the length of trails is often going to be longer than some people might be able to navigate. And the thing for me as a person with a mobility disability that makes such a difference is information. So when I went to the visitor center at Indiana Dunes, for example, they didn't have a brochure about what trails were accessible. But later, when I was working with the interns, they were like, "We're going to create a brochure about what trails are, most accessible in these ways that might work for folks who have mobility specific issues." And that kind of information, having it be front and center and really tells me, hey, somebody's thinking about this. They're thinking about how they can meet access needs and how they can incorporate, my access into this park. So, Joe, I want to come to you to wrap us up with the barriers and challenges, and just ask if there are things that you have seen that you're feeling, wow, we need to change this. Oh, and you're muted again. I'm telling you, it's okay. I'm just going to assume that for the next 20 years, we're always just going to say, "Oh, you're muted, friend."
And I
That's
will
what
be
I
the one,
do.
and I will be the one, guaranteed. Yes, okay. That, I would like to focus a little bit on sort of the challenge, the institutional challenges, which I probably had gained little insight navigating the organization just to elbow, additional spaces. Yes, and so I just want to share my journey and the things that I have been doing, sort of that it had sort of start little by little open spaces. And one of the things that I did, I began to highlighting at the board meetings about the missing opportunity of bringing more members. The organization is always talking about more members, more members. What do we do? And say, well, we have a great missing opportunity because we are not tapping to other communities who definitely may love nature and may love birds. So I think that is a whole, community out there that we need to start learning how to tap on. To be able to have something that it is, or we can do things that, for people, stressing about the wealth of knowledge and experience among the members, which we could leverage and possibly help all of these people be even happier because they are sharing their knowledge and their love with others, as their connections. And so bringing this sense of humanity in general terms, that there is, and so that you can start constructing strategies and things and whatnot. Yes, there are lots of arguments, anecdotes, experiences that anybody who has been birding as an amateur, as a professional, can share and make us, everybody warm their heart and laugh. Yeah. So, sort of to bring all of the, realities on the table, for every single one of the people who were there. I see that, sometimes, and many of times, it is matter of help, people connecting the dots. There's people sometimes don't see these kind of things. And, if you have that view of helping make these connections, then the organization starts seeing an angle. And it is like, I found that it was easy for me to sort of start having little conversations, at this level, having conversations one-to-one, having formal settings, and starting very small. And starting by myself, let's say, what about we do this? And so you go and do it. And so, like the demonstrate by example, a lot what to the arguments that Lindsay is making. Yes, you tell me no, I will try and I will see, and then you show people, how is it possible? And so people start seeing it. Not everybody sees what you see, but if you see and others see, they can start, supporting and copying and whatnot. So I think that is incredibly important.
Thank you for that, Joe. I think it's so important what you are uplifting. A couple of things. First of all, sometimes the barriers, again, as we've discussed, are attitudinal. And when we can reframe, for example, birding as not something that you have to have this incredible expertise or, a knowledge where you identify every single species, but rather we invite people in and uplift each person's incredible ability to what is the word I'm looking for when you offer something to the group. So yes, I love that, Joe, that piece around uplifting, that everybody has a role to play. That's the word that I'm looking for. And then connecting it right to the ways that we should be checking in with our communities, especially if we're in public roles, if we're checking in with our communities about what they need. So it's interesting because you were mentioning some of those kinds of things around institutional or kinds of barriers. I'm going to move us to the next question and just talk about or ask about, because this is probably our last round, what has been your experience for what helps to shift mindsets, friends? Because when we're really talking about barriers, certainly I think the place we have to start, even when what we want is a new trail grade, right? Is people understanding what it is that is important about that, changing the mindsets. So I'm curious, I'm going to go back to you, Connor, and I'm going to go around again and just say, are there things that you've advocated for in terms of access or inclusion where you had to come up with some really, some strategies to help people understand why there was value and importance in this work?
Well, that hasn't come up as much with me because my internship was directly aligned with birdability, and my goal was to create
True.
accessible bird programs. But what really worked for me was having a boss that was super supportive of access concerns.
Yeah.
Um, to the point knowing some access concerns and some access opportunities that I didn't even know. So when I would bring anything to her, I mean, it was like all things go.
Yes.
Just as long as I was having that support from somebody above me, because I'm just an intern. But when you have somebody with that power, when you have somebody like Kat who's advocating, have this internship program at all, and it's a partnership with the National Park Service, you're really getting a lot when you get these people have some power, that have some stake in the game, to really be supportive of an opportunity for access.
I so appreciate that. And I think that there's been an incredible amount of movement around access and inclusion that has happened when we're able to um, help people understand the value of the work that's happening. And Lindsay, I know I heard you speaking to like sort of the value of, oh my goodness, everybody deserves this. Like this should not even be right. We should recognize every human being has the right to be in nature and to bird, and that when we introduce them to conservation, conservation belongs to all of us. There's no way we're going to find the solutions that we need, right, to conservation issues unless literally every human being is involved in those answers and in those changes. I'm curious, Lindsay, if you have other thoughts that you will want to share about how you have been able to think about shifting mindsets and practices.
Yeah. I don't use this term because you'll understand in a moment when I say it, but I do something called ethical manipulation. And what that
You don't
means
just
is
say, hey, I'm going to ethically manipulate you. Hold on a second.
right. But what I mean by that is I make things personal
Yes.
in a positive way, where sometimes I'll tell people, like, I read the stat today that 39% of birders identify as having a disability.
Yes.
That is not a small number, and I'm sure it might
No.
even be higher.
Yep.
And I happen to live in a region full of senior citizens,
Yep.
of which we have a lot of disability access organizations here. So there's buy-in. People have like skin in the game essentially. And I make it personal in that way, where I'll just let people know like disabled people are the only minority that anyone at any point in their life can become a part of.
Mhm.
And so instead of caring about access when you have to, why not do it now? Because it's human care, it's community. And I'm all about community and bringing people in and connecting people. And so I make it personal. I'll just tell people, well, I can't do this program here because you said no, and now my little sister can't come, and I really love her. Like,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
ethical manipulation, and I really like to hold the mirror up to people because when something is personal, people care.
Yes.
That's just humans.
It really is. You're so right, Lindsay. Like one of the things that we know is that when people fall in love with birds, for example, they begin to care deeply about the habitats that sustain birds. They begin to think about, native plants and about climate change and about landscapes that are being sort of degraded. And so when it is something personal that we care about deeply, we suddenly find often an ability to show up in a different way. So while I hear you calling that ethical manipulation, I would say that's probably just putting a human face, right? And a human understanding on what access and inclusion bring to this. Michelle and Joe and Connor and Lindsay, we are literally 2 minutes out from needing to move to prizes. I knew this was going to happen. These conversations are conversations that ideally would have hours and hours of time for us to really dig into, to ask the audience more, right, about their experiences. Those are things that we're are going to be able to do in other webinar series down the line, and really excited about that. But I want to just ask you, anybody, just in a 1-word or 2-word answer, if you could wave a magic wand and change one thing about how outdoor organizations approach accessibility and inclusion, what would it be?
I would say looking for this mindset where shifting from you are invited to we expect you.
Yes. Yes. I love that. We expect you.
We expect you. You belong here. And to be able to do that, there are many, many things that have to change. But if I put my hat with that cultural angle, I think that I will change many things. So I will strike for that motto going forward.
I love that. Magic wand, bing. That we need that. Michelle, Lindsay, or Connor, anything you all want to add to that?
I would, thinking about this question, I would love to see where we don't have to label events as accessible events or inclusive events, that they're just events. And we're giving plenty of information so folks can decide for themselves if this feels accessible or this is a space where they're included. But really that all of the spaces and all of the events we're creating are that. So it's not a one or the other, it's always yes and everyone's welcome and belongs.
I really love that. We have a ways to go in that and so many other places. I saw somebody throw into the chat, they said, oh, intersectionality, recognizing the ways in which we bring our lived experience, not only our disabilities or our chronic health concerns, but also our race, our gender, our language, our culture with us in ways that all deserve to be uplifted and acknowledged and have events that are centering, right? All of that. So I love that. Magic wand, bing. I would like that as well. Lindsay, how about you?
Yeah, just building off the last two responses. The word that I can think of is authenticity, which directly ties in with Michelle. Like, it is nice that we do have Birdability Week and Latino Heritage Week and Black Birder Week, but these are just 7 days out of 365 and, add on for all of the years. So I would really like events to be authentic. It's not just check the box, we're done for the year, we're good. It needs to be all the time, every day, because this is lived experience for all of us. I don't live my life disabled for 1 week, I live it for the rest of my life.
Yep.
So I'd like to see program that is just like that and authentic.
Yeah, absolutely. So appreciate that. Connor, anything you want to add?
Michelle said it perfectly for what I was going to say, but instead of a hope or a desire for accessibility, desire to make things accessible more often.
Yes. Oh, if I had magic wands, friends, I think we know the world would look a little different. I am so grateful, though, for all of the ways that each of you change the world every single day. Getting to be in community with you and getting to be a part of your work is just such a joy, because it's important for all of us to remember that even as we're doing this hard work, there are successes and joys, and there are places of deep belonging and community. And that's really part of what Birdability Week is about. So thank you for sharing yourselves. Thank you for being here. I am really excited to offer or to ask you all. I see there's so much going on in the chat, and I just have to acknowledge I'm so delighted about the connection that people are making. That is certainly also part of what the BC3 does, the Birdability Captains Conservation Corps. If you work in conservation and you are interested in access and inclusion, please check it out on our website and consider joining us, because this community of practice uplifts each other, learns together, does a really amazing thing. Please take a moment also to complete a short feedback form, if you would, about our discussion today. Your input really does help us to shape programming that reflects our whole community. We take it very seriously. I think that Alex is going to put a link in shortly that is a form. You can also Google on our website, search on our website, and there is a link to that form there. And let's give away some prizes, because that feels like always the way to end something like this. I am delighted today to let you know that we have some really cool stuff. And the first thing that we're going to give away is a chirp sounds system. And I don't know if you all know what this is. It's a little thing. It looks like an acorn. It's about this big. It listens to the birds outside and it streams it to an included speaker inside. So you can listen to birds in your yard when it's cold, when it's rainy, when you can't have windows open. It's such a cool thing. We're going to give away a chirp sound system. And Alex, who wins today?
We have Camilla Batista.
Camilla, congratulations. You won at Chirp Sounds. I'm so excited. One of the things I want to just also remind you is everybody who has signed up for any of these virtual events, each event that you have signed up for, you are entered another time into the grand prize, which is a Vortex scope, angled scope, the Viper 1150, which is worth almost $1,000, friends. So really, I'm crossing fingers for you. The second thing we're giving away is a $25 gift certificate to Boodio Books. If you're familiar, you all, they are a bird-related bookstore. They are so supportive of our work. We absolutely adore them, and they have donated multiple $25 gift certificates to give away. Who wins this one, Alex?
Alex Nickel Harper.
Alex Nickel Harper. Yay! This is so awesome. Corrine, bird-related bookstore, what's their website? If you Google Buteo, Buteo books, it should pop right up, I hope. I have another book to give away. This one is an actual hard copy, friends, of The Social Lives of Birds, Flocks, Communes, and Families by Joan E. Strassman. It was donated as a giveaway prize from Penguin Random House, and we are giving one away today. Who gets that one?
Hannah Rumble.
Hannah Rumble. Yay! Congratulations, Hannah, another Birdability captain. And the last thing, friends, if you've admired my earrings today, my red-headed woodpecker earrings, I will tell you that they were created by Elizabeth Bondi, who is one of the founders of Part-Time Birders and an amazing artist. And she has donated 3 pairs of these, and one of them could be yours. They're custom, so you get to choose the bird that she makes for you. I chose red-headed woodpecker. Who gets that, Alex?
Gillian Banfield.
William Banfield, congratulations. So you all, Birdability Week continues. We've got days and days more to get to uplift the voices of disabled birders, to celebrate access and inclusion, and to be together in community. And I know some of you all will be at some of the other events. Tonight, we have a car birding workshop I'm super psyched about. It's one of my favorite pain day kinds of ways to see birds and hear birds. Tomorrow, we have an entire panel about what makes birding accessible when you bird using a wheelchair. And then on Thursday, we have both the field inclusive social field safety workshop and also a panel talking about the Blind Birder Birdathon and belonging and what the Blind Birder Birdathon really brought, right, to folks. And then on Friday, nature journaling, we're back here, Connor. I don't know if you're signed up for this one, but we've got another nature journaling, which I'm super psyched about on Friday. And Saturday, Dexter Patterson, the Wisco Birder, BIPOC Birding Club of Wisconsin, and the brand new author of the Birds of the Great Lakes is going to be here to talk about belonging in the biggest picture way. So we hope you'll join us for some of those. Thank you for being here and have a terrific rest of your day, friends.
Thank you.
Bye, you all.
Bye, everybody. Have a good night.
Have a great one, Felina.